who, after suffering an injury that wouldn't heal, was led on a journey to seek out alternative, holistic, and natural medicine. She now shares what she learned, helping people and their cats along their path to holistic health. Pam has taken courses in holistic health for animals, muscle testing, and animal communication. Please welcome Pam. Back to News for the Soul.
Hey everybody, it's Pam with Purrrfectly Holistic. Happy Monday. And this is Gunner popping in as usual to do his little cameo appearances for all of our live shows. And I am super excited tonight. I have personally vested in this next modality that we are going to discuss at length tonight. And I'm super, super honored to welcome Tracy Southwick, who is the owner and founder of Heights Health of Houston. And she's a naturopath doctor with many, many talents. So I'm going to let her tell you guys a little bit about her background and what she does. And we're going to talk all about mind, body, spirit release tonight. So thank you, Tracy, for being here.
Oh, thank you, Pam, so much. I'm really honored to be here. I've known you for many years and just always so honored to be in your presence. And you've just been such a light and wonderful person to know. So thank you for letting me share what I might know.
Oh, yeah.
You do have a lover there.
I'm telling you, he just loves to hang out, and I think he likes to be on the camera, honestly.
I think so. You know what? Because we were on before and he was nowhere to be seen. And the second the camera turned on, he hopped up.
Never fails. Every live I do, he has to pop in.
Oh, that's so precious. That is so precious. Just shows you they know so much.
They do. So tell our viewers and listeners just a little bit about you and how you got into doing what you're doing, because it's been many, many years.
Absolutely. It has been many years. So I started down this path like, you did. I had my own health issues in 1995. So I was diagnosed with a pretty severe case of Epstein-Barr virus and had a lot of other chronic things going along with that. And when I finally got the diagnosis, the doctor just said, well, there's nothing you can do. You'll be in and out of bed for the rest of your life. And I was young at that time. Youngish, newly married. And, I thought I had my whole life in front of me. And this doctor's just saying, your life is just going to be, not very much fun. And so, but he offered to give me Prozac. And that I was like, I'm not depressed, but I was getting depressed because of what he was telling me.
Yeah.
So I ended up, fortunately, I had a neighbor who said, you know what, you should try the store. And I was not, we had gone to chiropractors as a child, but I was very mainstream. Like I was, I took probably 8 rounds of antibiotics every year, since the time I was probably 2 years old. So you can imagine what put me in the place to get chronically ill. And I went in and they said, oh, that's easy. All you have to do is stop eating all the garbage I was eating, because I was living off of Diet Dr. Pepper and like cakes, and all these sweet neighbors were bringing cake and, all these comfort foods. And it's all I was ingesting. And so I had a completely imbalanced gut. I had massive fatigue and brain fog. And, I remember being in bed and thinking, literally, if the house was burning down, I didn't have enough energy to get out of the house. And I did not want to die. I just knew I was so fatigued. My mitochondria were just not pumping very much ATP out. So when I followed the suggestion of the people at the health food store, I was out of bed within 2 weeks. And I took supplements too. So it wasn't just dietary changes. So I took supplements, changed my diet, and I was just awed. And of course, everyone around me was too. And I became completely passionate about learning everything I could about how the body works. Nobody had ever told me that the body can heal itself. I mean, you think of things like you get a scratch and you heal. We take those things for granted. But I never thought that, wow, if you put good stuff in and take out the bad stuff, then the body can really do its job so much better. So it was a big shift. So I went from there to opening a health food store in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is out in the hill country, because I lived on a ranch out in that area. And had a radio show as well for a few years, and ended up moving back to Houston where I was brought up. And long story short, and in that interim, I became a naturopath, amongst several other things. And then when I opened, did I see you, Pam, from my home before I saw you in the clinic? Okay, but I had probably barely opened Heights of Health.
Yes. Right
Okay.
after that.
Right after that.
Right after that.
So I started seeing clients, and I had maybe a 5-month-old. Started seeing clients in the house, and within, I was actually doing emotional clearing work. So that's where I started. I did some physical stuff, but I really started focusing on emotional clearing trauma from events and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Within, a few months, it was just, people were just coming out of the woodwork saying, please help me, please help me. My husband said, sweetheart, I love this, but you got to get out of the house. You're like, people are coming through our living room.
Right.
Yeah. So I opened in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I opened Heights of Health.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Opened Heights of Health. And literally handpicked 3 of my clients and said, do you want to come do this? I will train you. Do you want to work for me? And that's what started. And we have, I think, 7 practitioners right now that are like directly related, but my focus is turned to teaching people how to do this so we can reach a bigger audience. And I love it. We have students. So I teach mind, body, spirit release. I created it over the years. It was something that I actually woke up one morning when I was living. I had a little respite living in London for my husband's work. And during that time, I worked kind of on the business versus in the business. And I just was, it was like I just woke up one morning and thought, this is what I need to do. And it kind of oddly just kind of everything I had learned up to that point came together. And did that. That was in about 13. And we worked in the clinic for several years with people, and then opened it up a year and a half ago to teaching people worldwide how to do this. And it's always been using it, like in clinic, we used it for animals, but we've never had anybody come through the training process whose sole focus is on animals, specifically cats. And until you. And it's so wonderful and interesting. And I want to hear some of your stories and experiences with it. Because it's a great way, because it really takes into account the holistic view of people and their pets and the connection between the two and that bond that you have. So if you can't just treat one aspect of the person and expect them, or the pet, and expect them to fully heal. It's, it's true with pretty much any disease process. There's always that, mind, body, spirit connection. So this is just a way to get into that, the mind, spirit kind of aspect of it to promote healing.
Absolutely.
So
talk about, since you are the author, designer, creator of Mind, Body, Spirit Release, give our viewers like an overview of what that means, and then we'll deep dive into the aspects of it, because it is mind-blowing. All of the type of blocks that we can investigate and uncover and clear. Like on so many levels. I don't even think people realize that there's some of these levels that they're holding on to. It's so cool.
It is very cool. It is very cool. So it's based on the premise that the body holds the memory of trauma and the related emotions with trauma. And the body holds trauma, or it doesn't have to be trauma. It can't be like big capital T trauma, like a big event, although some of us have those in our lives. well, we all have big traumas, but some are really like PTSD kind of traumas.
Right.
But even stressful events, our bodies remember those things. They hold on to them. The body holds on to them, even in the DNA. So there have been studies where they pass the DNA, or they test generations and can figure out, wow, the trauma that happened, for instance, in Holocaust survivors, the granddaughters of those Holocaust survivors have larger amygdalas, which is where your body deals with stress and has that stress response, than the normal person. They have higher anxiety than the normal person. So that trauma was passed on the DNA.
Right.
So you can have genetic trauma passed on, but you can also have trauma passed through the subconscious mind. And we operate 95% of the time from the subconscious mind. So it's incredible. And we've all done that. You know, you wake up and say, and I know you've probably heard me say this, I am not going to eat a cookie today. I'm no cookies today. And before you even realize it, you've got that cookie in your mouth. Something triggered you to go, oh, I just finished dinner. I'm going to have a cookie. And the subconscious mind is a third of a second faster than the conscious mind. So that's why we have those habits, or when we react to somebody, so our partner or our child or even our pet, if we are knee-jerk reaction. In fact, I just had it earlier with my daughter, and I went on a walk with my dog and thought, oh, that was such a subconscious reaction. She said something, or she was showing me some things. Her birthday's coming up, so she was showing me some things, and my first reaction was, you can't ask for all of that for your birthday. And she wasn't asking for all of that for your birthday, but it made me realize there's something in me that I need to address that was triggering something else. So we all have those experiences.
Yeah.
So now, at least that I'm aware of it, I can now do something about it. I can work on clearing it. So the first part of the mind, body, spirit release is identifying what your body's storing, whether it be in the subconscious mind or the DNA or even the water of the body. So if you've ever, I know you know Dr. Emoto's work, but if there are people on this show that don't, he is an amazing Japanese scientist. He passed a few years ago, but he did these amazing studies where he took water and he would take two receptacles of water and or multiple, and he would write different words on the receptacles. So one word might say forgiveness, and one vessel might say forgiveness. One might say anger, one might say love. And then he would freeze the water from each receptacle, and each one would show up with a different formation of a crystal. And as you can imagine, the ones that had read forgiveness or love would show up with these beautiful crystals, like a snowflake, you know, what you would want to see. And then the ones that had icky words on them, or even phrases like "you disgust me," were like, they look like these like black hole, gross stuff. And if you think about, our bodies are 70% or so water. What happens when the water looks like "you disgust me" versus the water looks like forgive or love, forgiveness or love, those kinds of things. So we also store water, or store emotions, in the water of our body. So that's why it's so important to surround ourselves. I'm getting a little down a rabbit hole, but surround ourselves with uplifting music, uplifting TV shows. So think about when you watch the news, what does that do into the water in your body? I'm not saying to not be aware of what's going on in the world, but the more we expose ourselves to really scary, icky, yucky things, the more that actually changes the water in our bodies. The more we think things, the more we have feelings that are negative. And I'm not saying don't have negative feelings, but we need to learn how to release them and let go of them. So we've got this concept that the body stores these emotions. And then, and then we get triggered, like I got triggered with my daughter earlier. I'm sure it goes back to something when I was a child. My mother said the same thing to me, and I swore I'd never be like my mother, and I'm like my mother, right? But we with mind, body, spirit release, we can identify what those imprints are. That's the first part of it, because one of my very favorite quotes is from Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's awareness is like the sun. Once light shines on it, things are transformed. And I know I kind of mixed it up a little bit, but it's all about that concept of having awareness, and even that alone can transform things.
Absolutely.
So we do that with, and you're phenomenally good at uncovering those blocks. So that's that first part. And then the second part of mind, body, spirit release is helping the body reduce that stress response to the trauma or whatever it is that you're holding on to, so you can release it. And then giving tools. Obviously with pets, you may not need to give tools. Pets and small children, man, amazing results, because they're so receptive. They don't have the filters that adults do. You know, they haven't shut down their intuition. They haven't had it shut down. So it's just a way using a cold laser. So you're using a cold laser that's imprinted with frequencies on specific points to help the body kind of let go of and release those negative memories, so that you can put in its place good, positive, life supporting memories and feelings and just frequencies.
Exactly.
Because we're in a frequency based universe. So we're dealing on that level of frequencies.
Yep.
So that was the long, probably not a short answer. That was a long answer.
No, but it's such a complex modality, you know, for someone who's never heard of it before. So I like the long version. You know, it gives a little bit more depth of the basis and the foundation for having the need to create such an amazing modality as mind, body, spirit release. So
thank you.
No, it truly does. And then some of the categories that we research are really, really cool. So, and I have my trusty little binder right.
Oh, look at that.
I keep it on my desk all the time because I'm constantly working on it. So go through some of the categories that we investigate and kind of shed some light on some of those.
Absolutely. Well, some of them are just basic things like a basic emotion. Mm-hmm. So you usually start with looking at basic emotions, and then we'll look at maybe emotions related to specific organs. So there are specific organs in the body, according to Chinese medicine, that attract or that your body can store specific emotions in. You can have any emotion stored in any tissue in any organ. Mm-hmm. But for instance, the liver tends to store anger, the gallbladder resentment, the kidneys fear, those kinds of things. So, I mean, think about what happens if somebody gets really scared, like a child, they wet their pants, right? So there's that fear aspect. But we look at what emotions might be trapped in certain organs and glands and tissues, even in the fascia, the interstitium, and the muscles. It can be anywhere in the body. You can also look at limiting beliefs. So, for instance, with chronic illness, a lot of times, you'll come up with the person might be, I have a feeling of unworthiness, but they also could feel like the only way I can get, the only way I feel loved is when I'm sick and people give me that kind of attention. That could be a subconscious thing. There's no judgment at all in this mind, body, spirit release stuff, because we can pick up on stuff from other people. So some of the blocks that we have could be, like I said earlier, generational blocks, but it could be something that your mother felt when she was pregnant with you. Mm-hmm. It could be something that your father felt when you were very young and you picked up on that. So for instance, if anger comes up with someone and I say, how does that resonate with you? And they're like, I'm not an angry person, but you know what? My boss is really angry. It makes me feel so icky being around my boss. Or
Right.
they could say, yeah, I, if they were abused as a child, maybe they had anger, but they weren't able to express it, or the anger of the abuser is imprinted on that person, and helping them release it helps them, their body to heal, because the body's a flow system. And think about when you get stressed, what happens? You get tense, right? In your shoulders. Well, that happens in the organs and in the tissues. You get constriction. And when you have constriction, nutrition can't get in and waste can't get out. So we definitely want to release those kinds of or stressful feelings, those low vibration emotions and limiting beliefs from different parts of the body to promote healing. That we look at people and places. So you could be, we call it dysresonance. And that's actually my favorite. I know you know this, Pam, because I say it all the time, but clearing dysresonance is just the coolest thing for people and relationships, and just creating more harmony. It doesn't make, like, it's not going to make somebody fall in love with you or anything like that. But if you are dysresonant with someone, a typical example would be, I keep trying to say nice things to this person, and this person only thinks that I'm being critical. So it's like there's no win. I can't do anything or say anything that this person will have a positive feeling from. And that's dysresonance. You're like, on different wavelengths. That's what my mother always called it. We're on different wavelengths. Yeah. So that can be super powerful, clearing that, just to kind of create harmony within families and between, a person and their pets, between pets, between, within a family or at work. There are all kinds of ways you can utilize that. We look into meridians. So are you holding in those 12 meridians, are you holding emotions? And that could, if you could be holding emotions or limiting beliefs in those meridians, that can actually affect the organs that the meridians run through. So that's another one. You've got chakras. So we work on the chakras as well. Could you be holding, emotions that are keeping that chakra either overactive or underactive? So you could have an emotion that could actually be stressing out the chakra and making it overactive, which could be unhealthy just as well as being underactive. We look at specific events. We look at generational blocks. What am I missing? I know you know all of these.
Talk about the elements.
The Chinese elements. Yes. So there are 5 elements in Chinese medicine. And when one of them is imbalanced, we're supposed to be in balance for our constitution. So you could be more dominant, for instance, a more dominant water element person, but you don't want that to become so far out of balance that, for instance, it could affect the water organs. So it could affect the kidneys and the bladder, but also when you have that out of balance, it could make it difficult for you to make decisions. You just kind of go with the flow, right? And so it could make it difficult for you to move forward in life. So bringing those elements back into balance for you can be really helpful on a physical and an emotional, from a physical and emotional standpoint. We've got,
And then miasms. I had never heard miasm until you used it with Grant McNair.
Oh, yes.
When you were working on Grant, I'm like, what's a miasm?
Miasm. Yes. So that's based on homeopathy. And that's another way you can pass things down genetically. So the miasm, one of the ones that actually shows up a lot for people is leprosy, believe it or not. So think about, I'll give you an example. So say somebody maybe 7 generations back had leprosy in your lineage. What did they do to lepers back then? They cast them out of society. They made them feel dirty and disgusting. They felt abandoned by their families, and they were left, I mean, to fend for themselves. So that miasm, or that imprint on the DNA, can pass through generations, and it may have been activated in your generation due to a specific event. So it's usually an event or or some kind of, it could be a physical or emotional trauma can activate the DNA for that. And when that happens, you've got two different things. You've got a physical level of symptoms that could show up. So leprosy, because it affected the skin, could cause you to have skin issues like eczema or boils or something. It's just a weakness in the skin. And then the emotional aspect would be, I feel all alone. I feel abandoned. I feel forsaken, those kinds of things. And when that comes up, it's amazing because it can be, I mean, it'll just be spot on. And the person will say, how'd you know that I felt that way? Because on the outside, they may not be putting that energy off, but on the inside, they're feeling that way. So we can help them recognize and then release some of that trauma. And the coolest thing about working in families is because really we're all so connected. Working on one person in a family is going to affect forward and backward. Same with pets, animals, forward and backward, their genealogy. So you're doing clearings for, the children and the parents and the grandparents and the grandchildren. So it's pretty cool.
It is very cool. It's very cool. And then one of the other categories that I find fascinating is the Basin prints, because those come up a lot with pets that have chronic issues and stuff that they can't figure out what's going on to cause the whatever. And so Basin print comes up and it's like, bingo, figured it out.
Yeah. This is the problem. It's bacteria or parasites or
Yes.
So those
or
are
or whatever.
Virus or mold or the kitty cat could be sleeping next to a moldy vent and you didn't even realize, and that's what's causing neurological issues. So the base imprints are a very great way to, we're not really allowed to diagnose, but they are a great way to kind of hone in on the energy of something to help then create a program around it so that it gives you insight that, you otherwise maybe wouldn't be able to do. Yeah.
Yes. And another category that we look at are hormones and neurotransmitters, because those can be impacted or causing stress, contributing to stress based on emotional things going on and things like that. They can interfere. There can be
Absolutely. Yeah. For instance, if you've got a specific emotion, for instance, loneliness, say if progesterone and loneliness come up, a lot of different things could happen when you've got that kind of combination. But a good example would be, second half of a woman's cycle, progesterone is supposed to go up. When that happens, it could be triggering feelings of loneliness. Well, what's that going to do to PMS? It's going to make it horrible. Or it could be as you go through menopause and progesterone lowers in the body's not producing as much. It could trigger you to have feelings of loneliness. It could be, and that could be something that goes back to, when you were really young or when you were in the womb and there was a lot of progesterone in your mother's body coursing through your mother's body and she was feeling lonely. And that combination imprinted on you. So your body remembers, high progesterone means loneliness. And so being able to recognize those things can make a big difference. And then, clearing the path for the body to release them can be super powerful.
Yes. I find just in the working on the pets, a lot of times, I would say well more than 50% of the time, when I'm working on a pet with when there is dysresonance with a person
Mm-hmm.
that comes up, the pet is taking on the emotions of the person to reflect and mirror back to them.
Mm-hmm.
To reflect. And I cannot tell you, and I'll go in and I'll check and just to make sure, is this your emotion? No. Is this your parent's emotion? Yes.
Yeah.
And when I send the report to the pet parent,
Mm-hmm.
they are mind blown. They're like, holy cow, how did you identify everything I'm feeling?
Wow. Yeah.
And it's really eye-opening for them. It's like showing them their reflection on paper. It's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I've been feeling the last few weeks or few months, or something going on in my life, or something I'm watching on TV that's affecting me to my core. And here my poor cat is taking all this on.
I know.
You know, and then it brings awareness.
Yes.
And so it ends up being a teaching moment to say, okay, what can we do to manage your stress and your issues? Because your cat's going to keep taking it on because they do that out of love, and they want to help.
I know.
But it's like they're putting the mirror up. And it's so interesting. It's like they don't recognize what they're seeing just in front of them.
Yeah.
They're looking at behavior.
Right.
And being able to turn that behavior into an expression of the emotions that they're experiencing or they're taking on, or that is affecting them, through their digestive system, or, whatever body organ gland tissue is being affected by taking all that on.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting. And when I was going through training with you guys, I was getting a lot of practice on my own cats. Because there was a lot of life changes going on at the time, and including a big move and all that. And so it was so interesting to sit down and start to go through the whole steps and procedures with them and figuring out, why are they throwing up? Why do they seem so sad? They've never had a backyard before. So going out into a backyard space has been wonderful for them. But there are two sets of dogs that live on one side and behind of it. And so if the dogs see the cats outside, they start bark, 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 they growl because they're just like, they're triggered by seeing a cat. So our cats are like beeline right back inside. They're scared. They're like, what is that? It's going to eat me,
Yes, of course.
Very traumatized. Here we go again. Let's get out the book, and have to clear all the negative energy. And then they would go right back outside as if nothing happened. It's the coolest.
It really is neat.
It's just really, really neat to see how quickly, like you said, pets process things so much quicker, it seems like. There's just less density, less layers, I feel.
I think so too. Because they're just love.
Yeah.
Just
let it go, release. But I will say that I was able to go through and identify a lot of next steps and recommendations that would be great for pets.
Oh, wonderful.
And a lot of those things are just things that I kind of have on my toolkit anyway. But things like using herbs, dried herbs, like an herb garden, color therapy, for some Reiki.
Nice.
Sometimes they'll need homeopathy for an issue. They might need exercise or confidence building type of activities, crystal therapy, maybe essential oil, things like that. So it's very interesting to use those kind of tools in partnership with Mind, Body, Spirit Release, just to reinforce what we worked on and what we cleared and all of that. So it's really amazing.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because a lot of the therapies that you're using are also amazing for the pet parent, right?
Yes.
And so they're getting the benefit of that therapy as well.
Exactly. It
'Cause
is.
it
It's
is.
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you
Yeah.
have any specific like stories without using people's names or whatever, just some really interesting examples that we can share with people? And then I've got some of my cats.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's one of my favorite. I've got a couple of really neat ones that that just have really stuck with me. And one was a man who was recently widowed, and he was having lung issues, and lung issues actually had been longstanding, but he really went downhill. Had been put on a parasite cleanse. And nothing was happening. So it was like, not passing anything, nothing's happening. And then I didn't do this. One of my practitioners cleared him of some stuff around grief, because the lungs tend to hold grief.
Yeah.
And he went home that night and literally coughed up a 16-inch worm. So the grief in his lungs was making him hold on to, I have a picture of it, a 16-inch worm.
Wow.
I know, crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's a hard one to forget.
I know, especially when you see the picture. The other that I love is about dysresonance, and it was a woman with her son. He had... she and her son, she was a single mom, one child. They had gotten into a big fight and were estranged, and had been for several years. Well, during this time when they were estranged, he got married and had a son. And of course, she was even more devastated, because she wanted so desperately to be apart, but he was completely not open to allowing his mother back into his life. So I did a dysresonance clearing for her with him, plus whatever emotions, and it's been so long. I mean, that was probably back 10 years ago, whatever emotions came up. And she left, and within 1 week, it was less than a week, I can't remember how many days, he called her out of the blue and said, I want you back in my life. And I get chills talking about it, because every time I saw her forever, she would say, you have no idea that I have the most wonderful relationship with my son and my grandson and my daughter-in-law. And it was just that simple, changing the energy between the two of them so that they could let go of whatever issues they were having.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's beautiful. And I can tell from my own personal experiences over the years of doing several sessions with your practitioners, and specifically Laura, who's done Mind Body Release on me a few times. Just over the years, we'd go in and we would craft an intention, like, what do you want to work on? And I would be having dysresonance with certain people in my life at the time, or situations that I was not pleased with, and so she would go through and do all her magic. I call it magic. Finding all the stuff, and then go through and show me on the paper, here's what we found, and this, and I just remember sitting there with my jaw on the floor going, how did you figure all that out? How did you know? Because it's so accurate. I didn't have to give her history, like a therapist, collecting notes and
right.
You don't have to share a whole lot of details.
In fact, it's better. Yeah, it's better not to.
It's better not to. Just so that whatever comes up is really authentic, and it's not. There's no. What's the word I'm looking for?
Bias.
Projecting or bias. My assumptions based on what I know or what I told her, that may come up or whatever. And it was just so interesting and right on. And I will tell you, I can specifically recall after one of the sessions, I probably 3 years ago or whatever it was. So after going through the clearing, it was a very deep, emotionally charged issue that was very hurtful, and trying to release all that. And I can remember her telling me, you may feel differently, but it may take a while for, stuff to kind of totally let go, whatever. So after the session, life goes on. We go back to our routines and this and that. But it was kind of like it just kind of faded from my memory. Like all of the stuff that I brought to the table and laid out and then was reflected back to me by what it was presented on the paper and what we had cleared. I realized after 2 or 3 months, I don't hold those feelings anymore.
Yeah. And
it was very subtle. It wasn't like I was checking in every week going, I wonder how I feel about whatever. It was just like, it was like the fog cleared and then the clouds just floated away.
Oh, that's so nice.
But it was so interesting because it wasn't something, it was so subtle. It's not that I felt different immediately, but it was like I just forgot about it.
Yeah.
And it
you weren't holding on to it anymore.
I wasn't holding on to it. And it was so cool to know that, okay, I really did let that go, because those particular people that irritated the fire out of me doesn't bother me anymore. You know,
you're not putting any energy into it. That's great.
Putting any energy into it anymore. So it was so cool to see that, to experience that personally. But I'll share with you some of my own cats.
Oh yes,
shenanigans and stories. One was so interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard of soul walk-ins.
Yes.
Okay, so for people who don't know what a soul walk-in is, it's I'm going to use a pet experience. So some of our pets in spirit will drop into a physical form of a current pet that you have, and they'll suddenly take on those personalities or characteristics just because they want to have a connection with you on some level, and then they'll drop out. So it's like they're just kind of popping in. That's why they call them drop-ins or walk-ins. So I was having one of those weeks where one of my cats in spirit, Hershey, who's like my soul cat, was like, I was thinking about him a lot for some reason. And the concept that I've heard, multiple times just kept popping into my head, soul walk in Hershey, soul walk in Hershey. And it would just kind of like flutter through my mind and go away. So I didn't really focus on it. But then one night I was sitting working, and it was getting kind of late. And my little one, who's around here somewhere, she comes in and she jumps up on, she wants held. And so I'm holding her, and she starts to go from shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, and she is purring, 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 purring.
Aww.
And then it suddenly dawned on me to test and see if it was Hershey. And by golly, I got a yes. And I was just like, what? Okay, I'm being in the moment, and he's, so for like 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, Hershey, I love you so much. Oh, I miss you so much. And it was just, the shoulder. And then he just like laid over my shoulder and just sat there for like 5 minutes. And I'm just holding him and just loving him, how much I love him and I miss him. And there was such a connection there. And then I asked a question. I said, so how do you like our new house? And it was like a flip of a switch. And she jumped. She just like got up and she sat over here on the desk, and she looked at me with this stink eye like, what the hell did you just do to me? And she was like, what just happened? You could see it on her face. And so I like, well, let's just see. So it was like the next day she didn't want her raw food for breakfast. And whenever she doesn't want raw food, in my experience. There's some emotional block or trauma that they went through, and it's a stressor. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go figure out why you don't want your raw food. So I started going through all her testing and everything. And so I was able to clear the raw food and taste buds and all of that good stuff. But the emotions that came up were, you're going to laugh, victimized, being manipulated and used.
Oh my goodness.
A block to feeling receptive, which was allowing.
Oh, wow.
And then I call it the people, places, sentient beings, pets category. Hershey in spirit, because it was
my goodness.
It was one of those non-family other, and that is
right.
A lot of times that's an entity that comes up on my list. Hershey in spirit, and a block to control, feeling controlling, a block to connection, plus prana, life force.
Oh my goodness.
Plus spiritual interference.
Wow, that makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, it just confirmed my whole experience with him the night before.
Oh.
And that's why she jumped down and looked at me like, what the heck just happened to me?
Yes, I'm sure.
She felt him jump in, jump out, whatever. And it was the most incredible experience. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm okay. And so now anytime like she gets really lovey like that, I'm like, this is Hershey. This is not Hershey. This, yes. I need to come back a couple more times. And it's been cool. But this time she didn't freak out.
Yeah.
So now she's not freaking out whenever he drops in. She's just like going with the flow, like, this is normal.
Perfect.
So cool.
That is really neat.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And then I had another client. This was interesting. He was afraid they built a house, and they had this beautiful, it's more like a modern looking stairwell with the open rails with like the almost like a wire.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a real different looking stairwell. And he was peeing upstairs on the carpet next to his litter box, not peeing in the litter box. So we did a lot of work on figuring out, okay, well, there's bladder issues going on there, but we got to figure out what caused his stress. Well, the stairwell was such a block for him, but guess why? There was a geopathic ley line going right through that stairwell, and he wanted nothing to do with it.
He could feel it.
Felt the energy, and the other cats in the house didn't bother them. But for whatever reason, this particular area was such a stressor to this cat. And I had never even known what a geopathic was. I knew what a ley line was, but I never really thought of the potential of it going through a house, a portion of a house, so much that it would become a stressor to an animal, which we know is highly sensitive to energies. And I thought that was so interesting, that he was sensitive to the geopathic. Yeah. And there was some sort of ley line. I said, you're going to have to figure out how to work around that area. And so we've done some multiple clearings because he layers. We're having to peel off layers and layers. So, but this week I got an update from him that he let his dad carry him down the stairs for the first time.
Okay, that's huge.
Friday, like a week before, and he started digging his closet, and when she got like 2 steps, and he's like, okay, that's a no. But he finally let Dad carry him down the stairs, and he played, and then Dad carried him back up the stairs. So we're making progress.
That's good.
Through that energies, that place. That it's so interesting. I just thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating. Have you thought about putting like a Trivibrance, one of those pendants, on the cat to see if that creates kind of a little bit of a bubble?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I will. Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yes, that's so interesting. I'm not sure if he wears a collar, but we could.
Oh, that's true.
More. Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting because, a ley line.
Yeah. How would you have ever come up with that? It's not something that's
It's like, what
it's
is it
in
about
our,
the stairwell? I knew it had to be with the stairwell, but why the stairwell? Is it haunted? I just didn't understand until we were able to identify what was it about the stairwell that was so uncomfortable for
that's
him.
incredible.
Yeah. And then this little guy the other day, who was very busy at the moment, crawling all over the desk, he started throwing up. His tummy was upset, and he threw up a bunch of grass the other morning, and he threw up 3 different times in 3 different piles, like consecutively, and there was pink in the vomit. So there's a little blood in there, and I'm like, oh dear, what's going on here? And it wasn't pancreas necessarily, and it wasn't a food sensitivity. So I think, okay, well, we got to go figure out what emotional blocks you have. And it was the neighbor. It was the dogs. He was so upset. I guess he talked to him a couple times, and he was like, I want to go outside, and those dogs won't leave me alone. And when we hold on to that resentment and anger and all that, and no, it was anxiety in the stomach.
Okay.
In our stomach.
Sure.
He had a lot of anxiety, and then had been building up in his tummy.
Wow. Oh, of course.
A lot of, digestive distress or whatever. So we used some homeopathy for that, and we used some herbs, and we did clearing. And he had a block to, he had resentment. He had a block to releasing and letting go.
Okay. Makes sense.
Plus survival fears.
Sure.
And he was overwhelmed and a block to peace. We had to clear the neighbor dogs with his pancreas and his stomach and his digestive system, plus the miasm number 1, which is that instinctive reaction, that survival that I get all the time. That panic, that's how they're wired. Animals are wired.
Survival. Yeah.
Yeah. And then his root chakra was out.
Wow.
That was affecting his digestive system and his pancreas and his stomach, and holding on to those negative emotions and not releasing and letting go. His sacral chakra came up. We had to clear that with digestive system, pancreas, and stomach. And his heart chakra came up, and we had to clear that digestive system, stomach, pancreas, and negative emotions. And that's why he had the blood in the vomiting. And his pancreas was all upset because it was all affecting his pancreas. But now he's all fine.
Totally fine.
He's totally fine. I mean, within 2 days, he's like, I'm good. He acted great like that same night. But I'm able to stay on his homeopathy for a couple of days. But still, it's so interesting how stuff like that comes up, and how it's all connected.
It's all connected.
The symptoms that he was showing me. So it's fascinating. So
it is. It's fun. You do such a great job of the detective work, and that's like what I love so much about it is everything's different, and you never know what's going to come up.
Right.
And that aha moment when you're like, oh my goodness, I never even thought about that. Just like the cat that you talked about earlier that was mirroring, the owner's,
stress,
owner's emotions.
Yep. I have a lot of cats who have these chronic digestive issues, and the vets labeled them IBD, things like that. And they don't know why, they can't figure it out. And I can't tell you how many times parasites are coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a very unknown, apparently, primary cause of IBD in cats.
Yeah, of course it is.
And so parasites, and then, if it's left untreated for years and not identified for years and years and years, you're going to have that constant state of disease and inflammation and all the symptoms that go along with all of that. So, and it's just so relieved. The pet parents are like, finally, somebody can tell me energetically what is going on with my animal.
And the parents needed to deal with their parasites.
Most
because the
likely.
parents probably have parasites. And I'll tell you a little hint just from my experience with my dog. And I took her to a couple of really good holistic vets, and neither of them could figure out what was going on. She was itching, and would not stop scratching. And it wasn't, any of the major things. And of course, they wanted to put her on cortisone.
Right.
I did a parasite cleanse and totally cleared up the itching, because parasites produce histamines. So you'll see a lot of itching and skin conditions or irritated skin if it's if they have parasites that are untreated.
So interesting.
I know.
That's so interesting. I know. I can't believe we're on like out of time, but I wanted to just let people know that I do offer the Mind, Body, Spirit Release now at Perfectly Holistic. I do for pet parents. I do for pets. And for the rest of the month, if you are interested, you're watching the show and you're interested in trying it, you can use the coupon code MBSR for 10% off the service to try it out. And then Tracy, for you guys, tell people where they can find you. You guys do amazing work for people for all different kinds of health issues. As a naturopath, as certified natural health practitioners at your clinic. So give people and just tell them where they can find you. And y'all do remotes. You people all over the world.
We do. Thank you. We are at, just go to heightsofhealth.com. Heightsofhealth.com. And yeah, Pam is amazing. I highly recommend her services. Because you've got it. I mean, you've got that balance of being able to work with both the parents and the pets. And I think that's so important. So important.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's their family, Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Well, no, thank you for your time and for sharing this amazing information. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us tonight. You will be able to watch this broadcast live or recorded. It's recorded on the platforms. And if you need to reach me, you can get in touch with me at pam@purrrfectlyholistic.com. And the MBSR, the Mind, Body, Spirit Release Services, is on shop.purrrfectlyholistic.com under services. Just look for Mind, Body, Spirit Release. And that will wrap us up for today. So everybody have a great rest of your night, and we will see you next month. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being here.